Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hired to Lead, a podcast brought to you by Zeren, part of Innovate. I'm Kim Wardle, Director of Design and Innovation Search. We go beyond the placement. We get into the real story behind the leader, the inflection points, the hard calls, the moments of doubt, and the breakthroughs that followed. The stories a resume simply can't capture. At Zeren, we believe the best insights come from people living it. Real conversations with world-class leaders and what it actually looks like to lead at the highest level. This is Hired to Lead. And today I'm joined by Andy Vitale, VP of Product Design and AI at Taxwell, a platform that's on a mission to make tax simple, stress-free, and accessible for millions of Americans every year. Hi, Andy.
Hey, Kim, how are you?
Great. It is so great to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
And
of course.
you are not a stranger to public speaking. I have seen you share many insights at in-person events, online events, and we've also collaborated previously. So today I want to go deeper. I want to go deeper than the stage talk actually, and I want to get into the real story behind you as a leader. So I'm going to
Perfect.
start. How did you get to where you are today? And was design always the path?
Design wasn't always the path for sure. I think, growing up playing sports, I thought one day maybe I'll be an athlete, and that didn't really go the way that I expected. Then I ended up, all right, dropping out of school the first time of trying to get TV and radio degree to explore a path at professional wrestling. And that also didn't go as planned. So at some point, I decided I had to go back to school and, wanted to do something related to digital computers. And design was one of those things that, as I've learned over time to tell stories and see the impact that things have, both visually, but also, the way things work, it felt like the natural path. And then for me, like getting into design, early days of web, there was still a lot of print work. I got to do some entrepreneurial things, got to start an agency, had a couple of interesting jobs in the beginning, but eventually learned self-taught a lot of these user experience principles while I was teaching um, different programs. And as these were emerging, I wanted to teach them enough to be able to teach them, or learn them enough to be able to teach my students. And, fast forward doing that a few years, ending up working in the industry and getting to work in some really interesting emerging technologies, the advent of mobile, AR, VR, AI for the last decade or so. So, craft has always been at the center in solving problems for people, but at some point, leading people became an opportunity that I took on. And that's really been something that's so important to me, being able to help people grow, to challenge them in ways that they've never thought possible. And for me, that is the path. And I guess it wasn't always the path, but it feels like the right ending of, you know, what it's taken to get here so far.
Wow, what an incredible journey and a man of many talents. I definitely need to see some of the wrestling pictures. Now, you've led design at a number of different organizations, Taxwell, Truist, Rocket. How has your view of what it means to be a great design leader changed? And is there anything you used to believe that you've completely reversed on?
So I think always as a leader, it's about challenging your people and creating space for them to do the best work, the work that they're proud of. That doesn't change, but I think as industry trends have shifted, there's been opportunities where your organization is so large that you can only focus on a handful of things and not all of the projects or priorities that are happening in an organization. And at some point, when you get to a certain level, leading design becomes part of your job, but leading other things, making organizational decisions and driving those takes on a lot more of your time. And I think now we're seeing this renaissance of design leaders over the last few years getting a lot closer to the work, being able to spend time to not just unblock what their teams are doing, but to really drive from like a position of being in the work with the team to help shape what they're building and help shape how you solve problems for people. And, obviously with AI, the amount of time that I spend close to the work now is incredible. And beyond that, it's not just the work that my team is doing, it's finding opportunities to collaborate across the organization to bring things that, legal could do or finance could do or marketing does, that we can turn into skills that we can put in the hands of anyone that's building products in our company to make us just sharper and faster.
Love that. It's almost bringing the excitement back again. Um,
Exactly.
and every leader has a moment that tests them, and I'm sure you've had many of those points. But was there ever a point in your career where you felt completely out of your depth? And if you had to look back, what did that moment teach you?
I think one of the things that really made me feel out of my depth were when organizational decisions were happening that we couldn't avoid, right? So working in an industry where the market just shifted on us and having scaled a team, but then realizing that the current state of the business couldn't support the size of the team that we had, and trying to think through how to help a third of our team figure out what was next for them, and having the conversations around, like, if you were me in this situation, what would you do? How would you handle this? What does this look like? And I remember setting up conversations and having group conversations and getting asked the same question repeatedly because people weren't listening to the question before. They were waiting for their turn to ask their own question that was very relevant to them. And I remember thinking, like, this is a very difficult thing. And I think, you know, having the right tools and materials provided to us as leaders to be able to answer questions, that's one thing. But being emotionally prepared to help guide people who are looking to you as more than just their leader in this moment, but like their mentor, their friend, their advisor, someone that they look up to, or someone that they really trust to make a really important life decision. And as leaders, we see a lot of different things that happen to people, you know, you name it, we've seen it. But when it all happens at once and it compounds, that's just something that really teaches you how to be present in the moment, how to not get frustrated when people are experiencing fear and anxiety, and how to help them turn that into something that becomes positive for them. It's really like I look back at that, and that was a time of amazing growth for me through a time of amazing like struggle and hardship across the board.
It's interesting, isn't it, that one? Because I think as a leader, empathy is so important. And I think
Right.
people want to work for leaders like that have the empathy. Yeah, I hear a lot that that's not always the case. But actually, I think if you are that sort of leader, that's how you get the best work out of your team, right?
Yeah, and it's really hard because we can't always be present in the moment, right? You could be having
Oh,
a one-on-one with someone and having five different things coming in all at once, and a fire from the CEO and an email from someone else, and you're like, wait, like I have to try to be present in this moment as well. So being able to balance that is another thing that, like, for me, I will just say, like, hey, I'm sorry, I just got something that caught my eye that I have to follow up with. Like, let me take care of this and get back to the conversation. And I think if you're like just open and transparent in the moment and help people understand that, like, interruptions happen and things happen, and like, oh, I'm sorry, like I literally was thinking about something else and zoned out for a second. Like, can we talk through that again? It doesn't happen all the time, but being able to be transparent in that moment so that the person at the other end isn't like, oh, they're not paying attention to me, right? Just be transparent, be there for people. And I think that's the most important part of leadership. Like, just show up.
yeah, that's such a great quality. Now, I want to talk about AI. It's
Yeah,
probably no
of course.
surprise. Um, because it's the conversation I'm having with every design leader right now. In fact, not even just design leaders, but obviously predominantly design leaders. But what's really interesting me is that despite all the noise, there are still a lot of leaders who haven't fully embraced it. And I know it's part of your role, but from where you sit, why do you think that is?
I think, I mean, my initial instinct is that it's fear. It's related to fear. It's like, this thing is moving so fast and I can't catch up to it. How do I show value besides that I can provide? And I think we see a lot of leaders and a lot of thought leaders that are out there that are talking about AI in a way that's very skeptical. And I think that that often comes from a place of not being in the current work environment and not being involved in a company that has the pressures every day of delivering to their board, to their stakeholders, to their shareholders. And, it's a technology. It started as a technology. Now it's a material that we build with. And I think everyone's trying to figure out how to bolt it on to the way they work instead of trying to figure out how to work with it and work around it. And I notice when people are new to using AI, the first thing they do is they try to pick apart what it couldn't do. Right? Like the other day, I worked on a video and just wanted to play with a new tool. And it took me a few minutes and I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, there's a couple of things that aren't great there. But then I took a step back and said, it did 85% of the work that I really needed it to do in a few minutes. And for me to spend the time fixing the 15% is a lot quicker than if I had to do the whole thing from scratch. But sometimes people don't look at that and they're like, it's wrong. It doesn't do this right. It doesn't do that right. But think about the things that it does. And, you know, you just have to jump in and play with it. I think if you started with it early when it became a first like conversation, it wasn't as capable as it is today by like 100x. So don't take that past experience that you had and feel kind of like, oh, it hasn't evolved since then. I think you really do need to spend the time to understand the boundaries because the organization expects you to be leading your team. They expect your team to be using it. They expect you to be using it. The best way as a leader to be able to guide your team to how to use it properly is to know its limitations, know its capabilities, and be able to share that with people.
Yeah. Absolutely. And how are you thinking about it when you like bring it into your team? Like, is there resistance and how are you leading through it?
I think there's always so there's some initial resistance, and I think some of that resistance comes from a place that we would be most surprised by. So we've spent a lot of years explaining to designers, like, you've got to understand the business. You have to know the business. You have to like show up a certain way. And now we're like, forget that, just play with these things. And I think there's this moment where they're like, wait, I'm not really allowed to just play because I have to be serious. It has to be about the business. So I'm trying to create space for the team to have like let's jam on a thing, let's play with a tool, let's explore something that may not be related to work. Then we start to put work guardrails on it and figure out ways to get them more comfortable using the different tools and materials. The other thing I try to do is find ways to improve the way that they can leverage AI. So whether that's for me, just like understanding our brand voice and tone and turning that into a skill and putting that at my designer's disposal, or trying to figure out a way that we can turn our design system into something that's web components and NPM packages and ways that anyone in the company who wants to build something can actually build and it will start to look and feel like our products. Like we're trying to democratize parts of design that we used to be seen as roadblocks for, knowing that we're not going to be able to stop 200 people from ideating and creating ideas. But instead of being the one that's creating those 200 ideas, how do we start to curate the best of those ideas and stitch them together to put the most seamless experience together and pick and choose the ones that have the most value for our customers so that we can actually put like time and energy into getting them right.
Yeah, love that. And what tools are you actually using right now? Which ones are you utilizing?
Yeah, so our designers right now are using ChatGPT, they're using Cursor, they're using Figma Make, they're using Claude. And we're also exploring other tools that help us do things differently. We've built our internal suite of tools that help people ideate, that help people understand how to connect to the right environments. So we're going to continue to add more capabilities to make them a little bit easier to understand for people who aren't coders, but be able to get the output that we need to test ideas quickly in the right material and the right code.
That sounds really interesting. And mind you, I bet if I asked you that question in 3 months' time, I can imagine those tools will be different again. It's so
Exactly.
moving at the
Even
speed of
looking
light.
Yeah, even looking at my personal stack is so different, right? There's Google AI Studio, there's exploration with Codex, there's definitely some use of Notion, and just really exploring all the tools that are available because, like you said, they are changing so quickly. It's important to at least understand what they're capable of and spend that time to do that because when we look at how often we use tools in an organization, I think ultimately with enterprise contracts and whatever we look for like 1 year, but we should be experimenting, swapping tools every couple of months, every 6 months. So the thing is, if you don't create a tool suite for your company to use or for your teams to use, then they have a hard time getting started because there's so many things that they could use or try or do. It's a lot easier if you say, hey, these are the official tools that we're using that you have at your disposal. Now make the most of what you have.
And for someone listening right now who knows they need to engage with AI, but they don't know where to start, what's the one practical thing they could do today?
If someone's looking to get started today, I think the best thing to do is pick a tool and jump in, right? Because if you wait to get started, if you wait to understand how it works, if you wait to watch a bunch of videos and read a couple of articles and listen to some podcasts, you're just delaying jumping in and learning. I think it's like pick that tool. I would say probably Claude is easy. You've got Claude Design or Claude Code, or just have a conversation with Claude Chat and see what you can build and see what it's capable of building and then understand those limitations. But you'll be surprised what you have at the end of a few minutes. And that to me, you will learn, you will make mistakes when you figure out how to deploy it to an environment. That's all part of the learning, the fun, like make the mistakes and just become comfortable.
Yeah. It's funny, I don't think I could ever imagine a day now where I don't use AI.
I know.
I'd be lost. Um, and I'm going to slightly shift now because
Okay.
this is something that I'm, I mean, I've been hearing this for as long as I can remember, but on the relationship between design and business, there's still a persistent tension in many organizations between design and commercial outcomes. How have you learned to navigate that? And do you think it will ever fully go away?
Well, I think that it shifts over time. So in the beginning, I learned early how to communicate the outputs and outcomes that are generated by design in the terms of the business, right? So creating, like understanding what's important, whatever product metrics we have, whether that's adoption or activation or retention, and being able to communicate what we're doing in design to solve those problems. This way, those outcomes, when they happen, you can point to them and they're like, yeah, that design team gets it, rather than giving the real estate tour of like the screen that we're building, because that starts to lose people and they feel like we're disconnected from the business. But where I think it's starting to shift now is it's acceptable that we're leaning into product outcomes, but I think there's this desire from companies for speed to market, speed to learning, where in the past we were a little skeptical of that because, oh, we're going to release that and we may not get a chance to iterate. But now the ability to build something and put it out and learn from it is so quick and so inexpensive that it's easy to go back and fix. Yet we're often thinking like we were in the past. And I remember having a breakfast with a CEO, and he's like, I really wish that design would be more of an accelerant than a speed bump. And I've dug into that. I see that. I see that a lot where people will come to the design team with ideas or with a thing that they think we should try or do. And we often meet it with a, well, maybe we shouldn't do this, or here's what has to be true for that to work, instead of just spending a few minutes and bringing it to life and understanding that as we're building it, we'll continue to shape it and shape those ideas and get it right. Because if we just try to poke holes at everything before we start building it, we're going to miss the key things that we want to build anyway, and it's just going to be seen as like not understanding what the business is trying to do, and that creates another disconnect. So it feels like in order to really be lockstep with the business, we've got to spend the time on the relationships to understand in the moment what's important to the business and what the currency of the business is, and then delivering value, meeting them where they are. And by doing that, that opens the door once you have trust to really say, hey, you know what? This may not be the right the right way to go. This may not be the right direction. Here's another idea. Here's another thing that we can do. But in the beginning, if you're just seen as adversarial to the business, then you're not going to get that buy-in and you're not going to be able to get your foot in the door to drive strategy.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely right. And it's funny, I still, hear the comments from non-design leaders. There's that perception that, design just makes things look pretty,
Yeah.
which it's crazy. And looking ahead, Andy, where do you see product design as a discipline in 3 to 5 years? I know that's probably difficult to answer when everything is, again, moving at the speed of light. But what does that mean for leaders coming up behind you?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to answer because the answer could be political in certain ways. Because we're seeing these disciplines merge over time. Maybe not in the way that we thought that we talked about a year ago, but we are seeing that the discovery process means anyone could be building something that we can put in front of customers. So I think designers have to really think about the business. They have to be fluent in technology because as these changes happen, what's going to be different for the next generation of design leaders is there may be a leader of digital or a leader of AI or leader of product that is going to be expected to be well rounded in all of these disciplines. So when you're going for that next level role in the next few years, you're not just going to be competing against another design leader. You're going to be competing for the attention of the CEO, of the VP of whatever department you're in, against your product peers, against your technology peers. And you have to really understand what language they're speaking and the things that they're talking about and how you can tie all of that to the number one thing that we know best as designers. How do we solve customer problems? How do we create something that feels so seamless and builds trust with the people that use our products? And I think you just have to be aware of the other, like the shifts that are happening.
Absolutely. Right. We're going to finish with a quick fire round. First answer that
Perfect.
comes to your mind.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Whiteboarding ideas or straight into AI?
Straight into AI.
Interesting. I was not expecting that answer.
I mean,
Wow.
you can whiteboard with AI. So
Yeah, exactly. And the design tool, I'll rephrase that one, sorry. The design tool you couldn't live without.
wow, you stumped me. Right now it's Claude. I will
Okay.
call Claude a design tool.
Okay. A book, podcast, or resource every design leader should know about.
I think Lenny's podcast.
Or hired to lead. But I agree with
Right.
Lenny's podcast is
The
particularly good.
reason I say Lenny's podcast is all of our peers and like I get a lot of Lenny's podcast links sent to me from like our executive team.
Yeah.
So it's really important to also read and listen to what they're listening to and be in that conversation.
Yeah. Love that. And the best piece of career advice you've ever been given in one sentence.
Stay true to yourself.
The biggest myth about design leadership.
That it is ivory tower, head in the clouds, not close to the work.
Interesting. And finally, what does good design feel like to you in 3 words?
It gets me.
Ah, brilliant. Andy, this has been brilliant. But before I let you go, where can people find you and follow your work?
LinkedIn's the best place. It's what I'm in touch with most of the day, and it's the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Fab. And for everyone listening, we actually have something exciting on the horizon for the design community, don't we?
Yep.
I'll be hosting a panel session with Andy and a group of other world-class design leaders. And our listeners will have the chance to put your questions directly to them. So watch this space. Details are coming very soon. We're just finalizing everything. But thank you so much for tuning in to Hired to Lead, brought to you by Zarin. It's time to boycott Lenny's podcast now and listen to this one. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who'd find it valuable. Leave us a review, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Andy.